Google ads versus Facebook ads. What is actually better? What should I be using for my business? And guys, the answer to this question is both. In an ideal situation, you guys really want to be leveraging both platforms because they both serve unique purposes. When people are scrolling through social media, that is a specific buying mindset, just as it is if people are searching for a specific service on Google. And we certainly need to factor in different things like cost, efficiency, buyer intent, ease of use. All of these things are going to be very important in making your decision. But I do want it to be known that if you want to have the highest chances of success, both of them should really be used synonymously, not a matter of one or the other. Now, easier said than done. I know a lot of you guys might be starting off in a position, whether you're just starting off with your company, or even if you've been running successfully, generating a lot of revenue, you might want to be cost efficient about this. Maybe you think that one might serve your business better than the other, depending on your style and how you present content and things of that nature. I want to just present to you objective facts, make it as seamless as possible for you guys to really understand these platforms and make that decision by the end of this video. So first, let's talk about some examples of the different types of ads on both platforms. Starting off with Google, you've probably seen the pay-per-click ads or the Google guaranteed ads, also known as Google local ads, and these are typically the most common in the cleaning service space. Now, there are also smart ads, which might be the Google My Business listings that you see the little ad text next to them. There's going to be the discovery ads, which are simply the ads that are shown in the Gmail inbox. And then there's also YouTube ads, whether that's video ads or the display ads, which present at the beginning of YouTube videos, which is also under Google's network. Now, talking about Facebook ads, there's lots of different placements. Could be talking about ads being shown on the Instagram Explore page, the video feed, the Facebook feed, the Instagram feed, and so on and so forth. But really, there's going to be different types of advertising styles for a specific action. The way that Facebook ads work is you're getting charged per impression. So the whole idea with Facebook is to get shown in front of as many people as possible. But now let's actually talk about 5 key points that I think are really going to be the differentiating factors between these advertising networks. And that's going to be audience, that's going to be buyer intent, price, ease of use, and then last but not least, other things to consider. That might be a little bit more subjective if I'm being honest, but things that I've just noticed are also important to note. So first, let's talk about the audience. Users are on Google, millions of users, as well as millions of users are on the Facebook and Instagram platform. But when we talk about actually dialing on your ideal audience, this is where I think Facebook actually beats Google. Because of its extensive targeting capabilities, you don't quite have that same flexibility with Google. I have to say Facebook wins this category hands down. So now let's talk about buyer intent, which is, okay, what's really going to generate me the most quality leads? And if you guys are just looking to get a quick job, make the buying process as quick as possible, then Google wins in this scenario. Oftentimes, the buying cycle is going to be a lot shorter on Google than it is on Facebook or Instagram, for example. Most of the people that are seeing ads on Google, it's because they're actively searching for specific terms that indicate high buyer intent, such as cleaning services near me, or where can I find a local cleaning company. On Facebook, it's less about that. It's more about how do we get in front of a specific amount of eyeballs and capture their attention as quick as possible. So this is where having a really strong content marketing strategy becomes super important if you are going to be utilizing something like Facebook or Instagram ads. Now, the one downfall about Google is that you do have the increased risk of dealing with price shoppers. Because when your listing is basically just a specific amount of text sandwiched in between several other cleaning companies, oftentimes you will see that, especially if you are at the top of the page, you're gonna get a lot of junk traffic. So don't be surprised that if you're running Google ads, you're getting a ton of phone calls of people that aren't necessarily serious. However, that being said, phone calls will convert a lot better on Google. Also, a lot of the times that people are looking for a service on Google, they need a service now. This is where those last minute cleanup jobs and same day service become really important, which can be a good or bad thing depending on how well equipped you are with staff. Both things considered, I will say that Google absolutely wins the buyer intent phase. Now, price. This is a big one for a lot of people. And as I briefly discussed, Google Ads is very much a pay per performance, meaning if someone clicks on your ad, if someone clicks a button to call you, that is how you are getting charged. Whereas Facebook is more of a fixed fee for the amount of impressions that you get in front of. So because Google knows that these people have higher and buyer intent, they are very much going to charge more for a specific type of call to action, whether that's a click, a phone call. Because of this, it is very much more competitive, especially if you are, let's say, bidding on keywords in the janitorial space, like commercial cleaning, janitorial service, etc. Google understands that this market is a high ticket market, and they are very much going to have a higher bid on those specific keywords. So you might be paying upwards of $30, $40, $50, potentially even $100 just for a single click on a specific keyword. A hefty bill could be racked up pretty quickly, especially if you don't really know what you're doing on Google. That is why it requires a lot more of an upfront investment, which I know a lot of companies are a little bit, weary on doing, especially if they're just starting out with their business. Facebook, on the other hand, is a much newer platform in the advertising space, growing exponentially, and you can get in front of a lot more eyeballs for a cheaper price. Now, the downfall, of course, as we discussed, is that you have to be more creative, you have to find ways to stop people in their tracks, but ultimately, if you are getting a click and someone's visiting your ad, getting brought to your landing page, your website, your messenger chat, whatever your call to action is, you can be sure that this acquisition cost is going to be a lot cheaper than you would be doing the same thing on Google. So I have to give Facebook the winner in the pricing section, and that is something that I know makes this platform very attractive, especially to newer advertisers. So now let's talk about ease of use. In my opinion, this is very subjective. If you come from a Google Ads background and you go into the Facebook Ads Manager in today's date, you are probably going to say that it's confusing. Vice versa, if you come from a Facebook ads background and you go into the AdWords Manager, you are going to see that, okay, this is pretty confusing to set up. I'm trying to remain as objective as possible, but I will say that I find the Google interface to be not so intuitive. There's a lot of moving parts, and I think overall, when it comes to crafting the proper ad strategy, it requires a lot more maintenance and a lot more upfront work. Doing the keyword research, seeing out what you're going to bid for each keyword, then defining what your bidding strategy is going to be. We're just talking about keywords right now. Then you go into talk about split testing different forms of ad copy, testing what your conversion rates look like. All of these things require a lot of teaching. Now, that being said, Facebook very much requires a lot of this upfront knowledge as well, but I think both things considered, Google definitely does have a larger margin for error. With Facebook, you kind of have to let the algorithm work for you once you kind of, are testing things. So like I said, both things considered, I think it really depends on kind of how your brain works and what your experience comes from. But I think most people would agree that the Facebook advertising platform is actually a little bit easier to use and a little bit easier to learn. So I give Facebook the winner in that category. So let's also talk about a few other things. Advertising restrictions, ad account bans. This is something that's been happening very frequently, really in the Facebook space. This is where I actually think Google, I would give the upper hand to, because you can get away with a lot more. For example, let's just say that you put a before and after photo ad on Facebook of a cleaning job that you did. Just by having the text before and after, whether that's on your ad or even your landing page, increases your chances of your ad getting flagged than had you, let's say, ran a Google ad to a landing page that had a before and after photo. And that is because Facebook is very strict. Their AI basically picks up on certain text in your ad, impinging on their policy. They will absolutely flag your ad and risk your ad account getting shut down. With Google, there's a lot less of that. You can get away with more things, and that is why I definitely will give Google the upper hand in this scenario. Now, something else I want to talk about is scalability. Meaning, if you see that your advertising network is going very well, you're going to want to put more money into it to reap the rewards. Now, what's actually more scalable? And what I've seen that is with Google Ads, oftentimes they'll work extremely well for a cleaning service, but they'll find that once they get to a certain budget per day, the more they increase their budget, the results don't necessarily follow along with that. When it used to be linear, now it starts to cap off. And that's just because the actual amount of search volume is very dependent on Google. If you have 20 people in your neighborhood searching for cleaning services, you increase your bids to service, let's say, 40 people that are searching, well, there's just simply not enough people that are searching. With Facebook, because there are so many people on their platform, I found it to be much more scalable, and you can get away with a higher budget and scale linearly for at least a longer amount of time. There's always going to be a pricing ceiling, but I found that Facebook allows you to scale a little bit quicker, so that is another thing to consider. All right, guys, so just to quickly recap these points of consideration, when it comes to the audience and targeting capabilities, I will definitely have to give Facebook the winner in this category. Now, when it comes to buyer intent of both advertising platforms, Google is definitely the superior platform in this scenario. Now, in terms of pricing and affordability, Facebook is definitely the more budget-friendly means of advertising. In terms of ease of use, as I mentioned, there is a lot of subjectivity to this, but I will have to say that, in my opinion, the Facebook Ads Manager is easier to understand than the Google Ads platform. And then we also talked about account qualities, having your ad account restricted or banned, and I will have to say that Google is the more friendly option in this scenario, meaning you are less likely to deal with the headache that comes with basically violating specific type of advertising policies. And last but not least, we talked about scalability, and this is a perfect example of why Google and Facebook should never be mutually exclusive. In fact, they work synonymously great, but if we talk about just one versus the other, you will find that you will get capped out on spending with the Google platform quicker than you do with Facebook. And that's when it makes sense to migrate to Facebook to supplement your Google Ads spending. But again, just looking at both things individually, I will have to say that Facebook wins in the sense that you could scale more linearly for a longer amount of time with their platform.